Hello everyone, Dean Dwyer with you for Bible Bites. Our question for today is, does Ezekiel 3 mean that Old Testament believers lose their salvation? Now this is an unusual question, but it really was born from a video we produced some time ago based on the security of Old Testament believers. From that video came the question, centered on Ezekiel 3, and whether that meant that Old Testament believers could lose their salvation. So this video is really an answer to that question. I said to the person that prompted that question, it was a very good question. A lot of people asked this in relation to Ezekiel 3, so we finally got around to doing a video to answer it. So if you really want to study Ezekiel 3 in depth, what I'd recommend that you do is stop the video, read the passage in its entirety so that you understand the background of why we're answering this question. Come back and then we'll explain it for you in detail. If you've already done that, or if you know the passage itself, you'll know that from Ezekiel 3, verse 16 to Ezekiel 3, verse 22, we see Ezekiel described as a watchman. And watchmen on the walls, as the passage so speaks, were vitally important to the safety of a city. And the image, if you read scripture, shows up frequently throughout the Bible. But the emphasis here is on judgment. And the words are a reminder that the prophet of God must be faithful to warn the people of judgment. And in turn, the people, of course, are expected to heed the warning and then turn away from their sin. So, spiritually speaking, the wall that protected Israel was their covenant relationship with the Lord. If they obeyed the terms of the covenant, as declared by Moses, God would care for his people, protect them, and of course, bless them. However, if they disobeyed, God would chasten them. But whether he was chastening them or blessing them, God would always be faithful to his covenant. After all, that's what he promised. Well, remember, if you've read Ezekiel 1 as well, it confirms that Ezekiel was among 8,000 soldiers and nobility who had been sent into exile, and they settled next to a canal in Babylonia. But some of the captives were blaming God for their plight, while others had blamed their ancestors. However, what Ezekiel did was he made it clear that each individual is personally accountable and responsible for their own decisions before God. In fact, many people call Ezekiel the prophet of individual responsibility. That's really, really important in today's age as well. This message is not just for Israel. We all have our own individual responsibility before God as New Testament believers. Well, in chapter 3, he represents 4 scenarios. The first is that of the people dying because the watchman was unfaithful and did not warn them. Their blood would be on the watchman's hands and he would be held accountable. 2, the second is that of the watchman being faithful to warn the wicked, but they refuse to listen. In this case, the watchman is not accountable. Third scenario, it describes the righteous dying because they turned from their covenant obedience and the watchman did not warn them. Again, their blood would be on the watchman's hands if he did not warn them. Finally, the fourth scenario is that of the righteous heeding the watchman's warning and not being judged. Of course, this is the most desired outcome and would mean that the watchman has performed his task admirably to the benefit of himself and the righteous. So what these 4 scenarios demonstrate is that the warning relates to obedience to the law and the danger of physical death. The passages did not relate to spiritual death, and therefore they cannot be used to support the claim that Old Testament believers had lost their salvation.